Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
How excited are you to get back onto Popper again? You're the only person
Yeah.
so far who's willing to go for Torture Take 2.
Oh, so I'm the only one for seconds so far.
So far, I
That's
think we've
great.
one
We've
other
got
person.
one other scheduled, but
Yeah, and they
Okay.
they
Yeah.
heard you did it already, or you were going to come back again, so they said, "Okay, cool. If there's someone else coming back."
Yeah, no, I was really excited to come back, actually.
Oh, it's great to have you. What made you pick number 24?
I think out of all the ones that you gave me, I tried a few of them, and I sort of, at first it was one of them that I had never done it before.
Yeah.
But I thought, because the sort of 3-page ones, I tend to sort of, I'm not sure. But this one was, I really liked this one musically, and just sort of it had some interesting technical things in it, which I thought would be interesting to explore. I think it was between this and 12, but 12 it's really good, but it does tend to go on a bit. So I thought this one had a slightly more rounded musical structure to it. So that was one of the reasons. And,
nice. That's excellent. So, I mean, I definitely really enjoyed doing this as well. Did you?
Yeah, I did. You know, it's funny how some of them, like last week we did, was it 32? We did last week.
Yeah, I mean, it all seems, we've been doing this for almost a year at this point, so it's very interesting for us.
Are you sure we haven't done this one? This one seems familiar. And what I noticed,
I'm really amazed. Amazed at how you guys have been doing. It's just amazing. It's inspired me to practice them, but I haven't done anything like what you guys do.
Well, you're very kind.
Yeah.
But it's actually quite fun for us, but very exciting that we're in the same room for
I
the first
know.
time ever.
It's just it's a whole different game. Like,
oh my god.
Doing it with a human being in person. But
if only we could have you here as well. Like,
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next time, we'll do that for our next series.
Maybe for the Piatti round for the.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Or Dotsauer.
But I was gonna say, it's funny with some of these because the last one we did was so repetitive that even though it was 2 pages, it felt like a real slog of one. And I thought this is quite a nice day. I'm glad you picked this one, and I'm not surprised you did because it is one of the more musically interesting ones left. Plus, I think there's so many sort of technical, I don't know, I'd almost call them like curiosities that this study explores, you know? But what did you think? I'm curious. How did you approach it and all that?
Well, I mean, I guess one of the sort of the obvious first things is just the sort of the use of the thumb position, 4th finger, and the sort of pentatonic figure is sort of, we don't really come across that often, you know, having to sort of change our hand position in a sort of more violinistic way, isn't it? It's sort of, you know, it takes a little bit of getting used to. Normally we're okay to sort of the structure of the hand with the, you know, the regular thumb position up to the 3rd finger. But adding this angle, there are some changes depending on where you are on the fingerboard that you have to sort of find that my elbow has to come in. My whole sort of balance has to sort of change slightly.
Absolutely, yeah. I found it really interesting for that as well, that when I started that, because of the Popper studies, I usually wouldn't have included a lot of 4th finger in my playing in general. But now that it's an extra tool, we've been practicing in every Popper study. He loves it. But I found it fascinating that, so I tend to do it with my wrist. So, you know, that movement doesn't necessarily come into a lot of things when we're, like you say, in repertoire. So it's actually a really helpful movement to get your balance over even the 3rd finger sometimes if you need it. But what I found fascinating was you also have to come back. So when you're here, in order for it to be in tune, for those 2 notes, you kind of have to do a bit of a shimmy in the 1 bar or 1 beat even. So that was fascinating for me to really get the tuning right.
I'll tell you another thing too, and this might not be something you guys noticed because our hands are different, I'm sure, but I find a lot with this 4th finger stuff, I have to be really careful that my 1st finger doesn't like hit other strings or make a noise when I'm doing that rotation. And also places like bar 16 with those harmonics. Like there you can hear I hit the other string. You know, being really clean with those, that you're not making extraneous strings.
Because I did notice all of those things when I was practicing it as well. I am actually somebody who does tend to like using the fourth finger in the higher positions when it's possible. Just sometimes I find much more comfortable in doing a stretch, like like for example in Dvorak. I'm much more comfortable doing that. But that's sort of the interval of a fourth. It's useful, but like you said, Katie, it's very easy for the position is there isn't so much movement that there's a risk of getting one of hitting the others by accident, which there are a few other cases that can happen. It can even be nice in a melodic context sometimes as well, like in Schumann. Depending on where you want to ship, it can be a nice option to have. Just
Yeah, it's a great one.
Then I have to massively change the the position of my hand just to get to the third finger, and the fourth finger is kind of right there. So, but
super. It's a handy one to have in your toolbox because often it does cut out a shift. And anything that can not upset the hand too much is great. But it's really fascinating to have 3 different cellists' hand positions because for me that exact stretch, the furthest I can stretch is that fourth. So for me, that's super comfy all the time because I know every time I'm going to push because that is. Wow. So it's fascinating to see what tool, depending on the length or the strength of your fingers. It's really good to have practiced all of them so that you can use what's best for you at the time, I suppose.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. I mean, that's really true. I mean, I guess I find that when I do use my fourth finger there, I do need a lot of weight support coming from back here. Even to get a vibrato, I need my whole weight it's supported back here, but it has to be brought slightly further forward,
Sure. Yeah.
So like vibrating. That's for me. That's the risk coming back to a 1 of hitting another string, but happy to just shift back. There's lots of options, which is cool.
That sounds beautiful.
Yeah, it's so really inspiring.
Good. It's lovely.
Well, as you said, I mean, it's everyone's hands are different, and they should do what's comfortable for them.
Yeah, but also push the boat out and do sometimes. I think this is what we have come to realize in this is we would often always go with our basic practice rules that work for us because we've spent 30 years owning what works fastest, and everyone does. But what's great about it is occasionally to intersperse with everybody else's favorite practice ideas. You're just giving yourself more tools all the time. So
do you know what I was thinking in this one? It's sort of like when you think of how like Mozart wrote all his opera arias for specific singers in mind. I sort of think about that with the various technical aspects we come across in Popper. So like, I mean, Ailbhe and I have like a kind of inside joke now with the Popper because like the harmonic business in this one, all of that stuff that happens. I'm like, that's a real hole in my technical playing because, it's not something you use that much. And you could easily write it off and say, oh, well, I hardly ever play any rep like that, so why do I need it? But then in the other way, you think, no, this is why you practice this, and this is why you hone these skills for those really unique moments when you do use that, and you completely know how to approach it then. But anyway.
We're not making excuses now, Katie.
No, we are not.
Yeah, that's good you mentioned the harmonic because that for me was the other big challenge of this. It sort of requires some sort of tricks to it, like I guess because you guys did Popper 40 quite early on, right, in this process.
We did.
You probably mastered all this. What I found is that I had to help a lot with my right hand, just to sort of just the sort of the even the tilt this way, if it was slightly, I guess flatter, and also just in the right proportion, from the the distance from the bridge, etc. It does change, especially on the thicker strings. I just played a project on gut strings before that, but before this, and it was a lot harder doing these. It sounds gorgeous on gut because they're much thicker. It's very difficult for the harmonics to speak. So we have that that challenge more on the lower strings anyway. annoyed me to no end. And getting them exactly to speak in the right. So I found it sort of almost stopping the notes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And helping a lot with this angle of the right hand as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys found any of that. I'd be curious what your.
When you say almost stopping, do you mean almost stopping in terms of the amount of pressure you're using the left hand, or almost stopping in the bow?
No, I meant sort of the left hand, contact with the string. Because I think sometimes, because they're so close to the A, there's any number of them that can come in.
Yeah.
Stage,
I find the whole thing fascinating, particularly when you start and you have to go from a harmonic, real note, harmonic.
Yeah, that's
you do
right.
have to actually think about that feeling that you're going to do. And often, every time these harmonics happen, there's always one or two, or there's that really weird place where you end up playing the F sharp as a real note. I don't know where it is. Yeah, it's here. So, real note on a thumb, and then a harmonic. So, actually, really being very clear about which notes are physically stopped and which ones aren't, and then being able to tip over into it. I think that's something that's not really talked about a lot. Is that transfer, like you're sliding up or down to it? You know what I mean?
That's true, and yeah, absolutely, and also how different the right hand feels. So I do find myself going slightly deeper for the real note, just because it, and it's interesting as you go higher up. The reason I sort of go more towards the bridge is that on the harmonic series, the best ones to speak, if they're well supported, are the octave, the fifth, and the third is okay. But if you really want to get the others, it requires a slightly different, actually lighter bow. So that I've tried doing slightly the opposite, and so that I wouldn't hit those the ones that weren't written. But it's fun actually just trying all over the cello. Exactly the amount of pressure and distance from the bridge needed to get these to speak. Getting them to do it together. It's really good for opening the cello.
Actually, as you were saying this, if one of the purposes of this is to sort of get like the cello to open up with all these harmonics we do here, and I don't know how aware they were of that stuff back then. Maybe they were.
I mean, maybe they all improvised all of the harmonics all the time. They suddenly would be like,
totally. There's so many of those virtuoso pieces from the time on certainly on the violin, and I think cellists would have also taken that on board. I think in their cadenzas and flourishes, and people used to ornament so much more unwritten stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Certainly 18th and even 19th centuries, even at the beginning of the 20th, people were still doing it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna bring it back. That's what we're gonna do.
Bringing back harmonics.
There will definitely be some artistic liberties in this study. I'll tell you that.
I love the way you're just coming straight out with it. There's no hiding it.
I was going to ask you. I mean, Christian, how you felt about tempo variation in this study? If you have,
I in general, I'm actually sort of usually in favor of going with the musical flow. I think the sort of tempo variation was something that was much more common, back in the 18th and 19th centuries. I think people in fact, what you get later on in music are counter markings. Like in Fauré, there might be sans pressé, because he just sort of knew, that the instinct will be for them to go here. Please don't do that. And I think in situations where, or non-crescendo, places where they trusted people's instincts to follow the music in that sense, and and the right sort of counter into, please don't do that because I really want something different from how it might look at first. I think for this I quite enjoyed messing around a little bit with rubato and things like that.
Yeah, like there are some moments I thought, like 51 for example. Like it just snap. It wouldn't happen musically. So why would we do that? Obviously it feels like a cop out because obviously that's hard bar as well. But I think that you would never play that in a piece.
Yeah, I can't imagine just doing it all straight. It just would sort of miss the point. Like you said, it's like an aria moment, you know, where you want to hear the singer get to that top pitch, don't you?
I don't think anyone but dogs could have heard me on that high note. Just saying.
Yeah, I think it's maybe not even the highest, but there's that high D near the beginning, right, which is even higher. It's insanely high. The only other bit in this study that gave me a little bit of a nightmare was the sixths, this bit. What bar is that? I'm not able to do the fingering that he wrote, which is that. I just couldn't get it. You know, my hands don't do that. I don't know how you guys have done that.
We've got this very fancy Barenreiter edition now, which actually has the fingering you're doing. Because I guess.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
So it's Well, I came up with a different solution, which is actually not very easy either, but. So I'm curling around, but it's very hard for intonation. So I'm doing a thumb in one and a 2 and 3 on the other note, but we'll see how that goes in the run through. But it just it just requires one's hand to sort of turn very much this way, as opposed to the normal, keeping it straight or like this.
I'm a big fan of that. Like, obviously the Sanson, everybody does this kind of idea where you're doing that.
Right. Yeah.
I do that everywhere because for my hand, it's much more comfortable for me to go diagonally that way, rather than try and do whatever reason my length of my fingers. I do an awful lot of in the sixth suite. I do an awful lot of this, and another skill to your toolbox because you can get things better weight balance going on. Mm-hmm. So I'd say that works brilliantly there.
Yeah, definitely.
I definitely went Barenreiter. Absolutely.
That's good. That's really good to know that it's in there because my earlier, I think it's Peter's edition, has this fingering, which I really just can't imagine doing. But I'm sure people have done it very successfully, but I wouldn't be one of them.
I did try it, but it's a bit. It's just a bit too much effort.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the downside to this fingering, apart from obvious slurpiness, is, and I thought this was a general theme actually in this study for me, is there's a lot of things that make you you could easily lose your way, So I think there's definitely a risk of, getting a little too sharp by the time you get to the
right,
And then what other was like that? The one with all the thirds, 13 is the same. There's a lot of like you're kind of sliding around, and it's really about like how accurate are your little half step shifts everywhere. Because
and what are you listening to?
Yeah,
you have to be able to think of one either top or bottom line. So it always comes back to that like you listen to one thing specifically, not everything, or else you need to have some kind of bar to have your tuning really centered.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, no, that's really useful, and I think it's a really common recurring theme in Popper is that it's some of the sort of more chromatic figurations can be really hard to hear. I mean, I have I have perfect pitch, so I just kind of go with the note itself. But I think for that's one of the reasons these are so helpful. I think it's for really good for developing really good relative pitch. I mean, having perfect pitch, you can still get them wildly out of tune, but it's sort of it gives you that extra sort of security with the center of whereas the pitch and
which is great. So, but anything whether you have perfect pitch or a relative pitch, I think for anyone who's watching, they're all of these areas, even something like bar 40.
Yes.
So the bottom note I found, if you listen to them, and actually, I wondered, was this a mistake? And did he?
Yes.
Yeah. I wondered that
Should
too.
have
Yeah.
seen that. Popper.
Yeah.
I'm always having a rant at Popper because he, went off for a cup of tea instead of actually finishing his proper homework.
Right. Yes, I did play a C sharp actually. Yeah.
No, me too. I think it's regardless.
Yeah.
I just wondered,
But
or did he want to pedal C sharp? I don't know. Who knows?
Right. Yeah. But you're so right. These sort of, because the figurations that come all the way through these etudes are very cellistic, but they're also really good for developing the ear.
Yeah.
So it's
Very
sort of
much
like I think number 3 has a lot of things like that. It's one of the simpler studies, but it's really good for developing the ear.
Harmony changes. Like I found one that was particularly tricky is going from 22 into 23. You're moving mostly stepwise, and then suddenly you have this kind of weird.
Diminished harmony.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Going into major there as well is kind of weird, isn't it?
It's very weird.
You're like, we're happy.
Yeah. It's true. It's quite yeah.
What did you think about? There are quite a number of link shifts in here that are kind of odd. 19, 20, getting into those places.
Can't remember what I did.
Depending on where you're.
I think I shifted down to a thumb.
Yeah. So just.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you have to make a decision. Which one are you going to do? Are you going to do thumb? Are you going to do third finger link? They all work equally as well, but you do have to make a decision, or else that would be very unclean. And similarly, 29 to 30, I thought that was an unusual one.
Yeah. Yes.
That one is quite pitchy as far as how are you going. And I used a link note C, so I actually did a perfect fourth shift.
Wow.
I see. Okay, that's interesting.
Now, these are kind of decisions I think people need to make, or else suddenly things become just a tiny bit edgy and uncomfortable, and then you move on to the next proper study without having really made a choice about these things. And this is a thing that will save you on stage versus not.
Yeah.
So make
totally. No, absolutely right. And definitely just sort of going with the harmony for the sort of intellectual conception of it is the most helpful thing. Like
big time.
Obviously, into major 7 to a B flat, first inverted, then to A. The next diminished down is A major. But as you said, choosing where to pivot, physically where to pivot is very helpful. Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes I prefer to just sort of go with the arc of my hand, how much or how little I need to change it. That can sometimes. As you said, I think everyone's very individual with that kind of sensation of how it feels to.
What about at the very end, the at tempo? That's a bit of an awkward spot, isn't it?
Oh yes.
It was the E for me. I wanted to make sure that was the pivot note. That if I suddenly had the E in the right place in the same as the first one, then I was generally okay.
It's true because it sort of requires us to feel the balance on each finger. If you're sort of going from fourth finger to thumb, you can just sort of move it quite differently. But having to go back to the second requires you to really feel this sort of. Well, you were saying, Ailbhe, you prefer to do it with the wrist. For me, I do need to involve my elbow, upper arm a little bit.
Yeah.
It's interesting that just I guess it's sort of. It's almost a position, but with that extra little, support being given back here.
That's actually a different fingering from what we have in the third.
Oh, okay.
And actually, I didn't check that fingering. So.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, I didn't. I must pick up that Baron Rider version. It'd be quite.
It is fascinating because
a
lot of the things I think are hilarious and not in any way what I would do personally. There are a few things that just wouldn't suit my hand at all, and I would never choose those fingerings. So mostly it's a combination of both, I think.
It is funny. There's some things that are great about this edition, but there's some things that are very personalized as well.
Of course,
and some of the bowings have been changed and things like that. You'll see, I'm sure.
The other one thing I was going to mention, you guys have probably talked a lot in other studies. It's just the crossing of strings smoothly.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's to do that. I always do rhythms and. Also helpful for the left hand as well, but you get used to the sort of smoothing out the
This is very exciting. I love it. Does anyone want to talk about the connection into bar 66, 66, 67? Moving in there. I needed to put I had to actually turn around a little bit just to get enough weight over that third finger comparatively to where I was. And just as another little thing, when I started 63 at that fingering, I actually felt it was way more successful if I came into it with my thumb already up.
Okay.
Because I found later on was very stable, but for some reason this wasn't. But if you go, then suddenly it was stable.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think having the sort of the weight there, it sort of prevents it, because otherwise it can get out of control very quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess
it explains a lot of why I was feeling very not centered. I might chance it and try the thumb thing.
I love it.
Yeah. So in Dvorak as well, it's the same, isn't it? It's sort of.
Yes.
God, I can't remember the cases. You know the one. Yes, yeah. It's not weighted down. It's impossible to get the right.
I feel like doing that. Right,
Brilliant.
who's going to go first?
Well, I guess I've got to do it now. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
That was so calm.
Sublime.
Well,
so, like just glorious. Good for the soul of an afternoon.
Gosh, those
thank
harmonics were just like little
you.
beams of joy.
Well,
They were just like stars in the night sky.
Oh, it is so musical. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you know, it shows so much. I mean, everything you said about Popper and how he's such a great musician, you really highlighted that in the way you
Oh,
performed.
thank you. Well, thank you so much. No, I think it's a really useful one, and you know, it's thanks for giving me the opportunity to learn it, because this is one I hadn't done before, and yeah, it's I mean, they're all useful, but it's just like it's really good to sort of go back and discover, you know, things.
Yeah.
Even a technical thing that you sort of think, oh, well, you know, I sort of I'm okay at that, and you know, but it's just really good to go back and just sort of study it in a new way, because they always puts a different slant on even familiar things. So it's
it really does.
it's really. Hey, that's terrific. Well done, Katie.
Oh my God, you were so calm and cool and collected. With like someone sitting right in your face.
It's the old swan, you know, it's on the surface underneath. Woo! Wow, that was
Fair play.
something, man.
I'm very impressed.
Woohoo! Ow, 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 ow! They sitting that close to her doing them. Impressive, man. Really impressive.
You know, I was very
Awesome.
thankful for Popper 40.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good
I
one
did
to
that
have in the
first.
bag, isn't it?
Yeah, man. Well, playing that.
Well
Fantastic. Well done.
Thank you. Well,
That's
you know,
super.
it always feels like an achievement on a Popper day.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it really does, doesn't it?
We've earned our cupcake. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm so having a
Yeah. I'm really amazed how you guys basically do like one a week. I mean, you know, it's just some of these. There's no way I could have just polished them off in a week. You know,
Yeah,
much
we just
longer.
go
No, but it's so great for your technique to be doing that, and actually not just for your technique, just for you know, just for thinking about the cello, thinking about music, because there's actually lots of just really wonderful, you know, harmonic paradigms in this music. That you know, he was clearly a really good musician. He understood. You know, a lot about phrasing and harmony, and you know, there's a unique style to these pieces as well. I think, which is really not just about honing your cello playing, but about just sort of music in general. So it's a super project. I'm totally
Thank you so much for being part
very
of it.
impressed.
You
Oh
just
yeah, no, it's great. It's really good for me.
Yeah.
I definitely haven't gotten through 40 of them in the past. I think I might have been through lockdown, gone through about 10 or something, 10 or 12. But there's lots more I need to revisit.
Well,
Some I need to learn. So
I have to say
Wow,
too, I think if you asked me a year ago if I would sit in front of other cellists playing this stuff, I would have never in a million years thought I'd have the guts to do it. And now it does almost feel like not a big deal.
Yeah, like
when you're doing one a week, you know.
I think I would say I'm loving this project, even though I'm also dying for it to be finished.
Yeah, but I mean that's amazing. You're gonna sit back and say, "My God, you know, we actually leaf through that book. Wow, did them all? Look at that."
Yeah,
we have how many?
You've got video evidence as well, which is even better.
Yeah,
total pleasure, Christian.
Yeah,
thank you so much, guys. So nice to be doing this again. Really nice to see you all. When was I think the last one we did was February or something, wasn't it? It was quite a long time ago, and the world was rather different. So it's really nice to be doing it now with you guys again. We're still at it, still at Popper.
I know.
Can you believe it? Do we look like we've had a heart attack since then?
Yeah, it must be good for your health. You guys are looking great. So.
Oh, thanks.
Well, you too.
Yeah.
Proper works for everyone. I love it.
Cool.
Well, hopefully we'll see you soon in real life again. And,
Yeah, that'd be terrific. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, you too.
Okay.
See you.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you. Bye, Christian.